You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. Whether you are joining us from YouTube, Rumble, X over on the live stream side, the radio side across the syndication network, or our few TV partners of the podcast later, we're really glad that you're here because there is a lot to dig into. When I said we're going to round out the week, they made sure this is a really well-rounded set of news for the end of this extremely long couple of days. Before we even get to the situation regarding Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who the media lovingly refer to as Maryland Man, we'll get to him. But first, we need to talk about the situation that is still developing in Los Angeles. So Immigration Customs Enforcement acting on very concerning reports over, again, human trafficking, drug production and distribution, including fentanyl, and situations that might involve missing children. This is the same kind of thing that we saw in South Carolina with the operation that just concluded. Residents in Los Angeles, as producer Nick tells me, who's been watching the videos as this story has broken over the last couple of hours, are either really stereotypically dressed old white liberals who look as though they're on their way to yell at teachers' union meetings, or what was the word that you used, my Hispanic friend? Was it very large, hefty, perhaps, young Hispanic women who were calling the cops pigs? Yes. So that seems to be the two crews who, again, coming out to yell at Immigration Customs Enforcement over removing illegal immigrants who have committed serious criminal violations from the area is expected. Now, do I think that it looks particularly good to suggest that removing human traffickers and drug dealers from the community is like the same thing as the return of the Third Reich? No, I don't think that looks good at all. I think that makes you look stupid. But the left has decided to go all in. So the Los Angeles Times kicked it off by saying, quote, ICE agents with assault rifles tossed flashbangs in, and this is the wording they used to a T, a serene SoCal neighborhood. City officials outraged. Oh, it's just a serene, guys, kids running around on bicycles, a totally wonderful and lovely place. It certainly isn't the exact kind of neighborhood you think it is.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Good.
Shame! Back up! Yeah, back up! Back up!
Yes, yelling at federal officers and telling them to back up. Again, not just there to pick up Granny, not there to pick up the pregnant mom or the old man playing chess in the park. These are, as we have seen repeatedly from the mugshots, from the evidence, individuals who have participated in human trafficking, the production and distribution of harmful drugs, including fentanyl. Not to mention, as we're going to talk about with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, child exploitative materials. So all kinds of insanity going on in Los Angeles. Good. Yelling, chasing the ICE officers down. Again, just a bunch of really skinny, goofy, liberal in people advanced in age, and then younger, obese individuals. Again, not particularly the move that I would have suggested. Then they decided to get extra stupid because it's LA. And so one of the individuals, after, I guess, locking ICE agents into a building via like a local business owner, SUVs were attempting to leave, which I thought is what the protesters wanted them to do. And then one of the protesters steps in front of the SUV and tries to block it. Again, stepping in front of moving vehicles, not the smartest decision.
Homeland Security investigators are still inside the building. Whether or not they're still trying to collect evidence, not entirely sure. But now here goes 3 vehicles from the parking lot with those people that were detained from the business just moments ago. And here comes the crowd. They are trying to move with the vehicles down up the street here.
So it's time for a desperate rescue here. So, all right, assemble the Avengers. Oh no, they've bagged my local neighborhood trafficker and fentanyl dealer, a cornerstone of the community.
Stanford and they are being escorted here by the tactical vehicle. You can see some of that puff of that white smoke there. That's something they were using for crowd control, trying to keep those people from the gate here. Okay, so here we are. We're in the middle of the street here.
Someone tries running in, playing a little Frogger.
You can see one person trying to stand right in front of this SUV here, but he's going to...
SUVs are trying to go around, trying the old, well, you need to stop because I'm a pedestrian maneuver.
It's just such a dangerous situation here, and it's really...
So he's doing the backwards running man.
Not going to do him any good to be standing there and possibly get ran over by agents. So...
Look at the guy on the scooter next to him. You see that? The guy running that was legitness. Like, he got like old Scooty McJones over there.
Here they are. They're on 9th Street now. The crowd is...
So if you're watching this and you're not listening to it later on, or either on the radio or the podcast, you and I both know what's coming. Because people who do the backpedaling maneuver on the stellar streets of any United States city are probably not going to be able to keep that up for long without tripping.
Running alongside with these vehicles, and I'd pretty much guarantee that this SUV is not going to stop. Someone's throwing.
And there he goes. He goes down.
Oh! Wow. All right, let me widen out here.
And then the crowd starts to descend.
We saw some eggs being thrown at the vehicle.
The SUV vehicle backs up and then goes around. Because, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The FBI has been deployed to the area to assist the agents. Not going to play some of the other footage, at least not at this particular moment. It's just more of the same. Mayor Karen Bass has decided to release a statement. It's nice to know that she's not actually in Ghana this time. She says, quote, "This morning we received reports of federal immigration enforcement actions in multiple locations in LA. As a mayor of a proud city of immigrants, who contribute to our city in so many ways. I am deeply angered by what has taken place. Yeah, God forbid anyone get rid of the drug dealers in LA. That's like, getting rid of a church in Alabama. You don't do that. So these tactics sow terror in our communities and disrupt basic principles of safety in our city. My office is in close coordination with immigrant rights community organizations. We will not stand for this." Which is, kind of incredible because she spent the last couple of weeks denying and slow-walking rebuilding permits. So she likes to talk about how important it is to her to protect people in her community when half of them are sleeping outside because their homes burnt down and she didn't fast-track the approval process for grants at all. Since the LA fires, they had approved 10 grants as of last week. 10. There are a lot more than 10 houses in Los Angeles. I don't know if you know anything about the geography of the area. So incredible stuff from the Democrats. Again, going all in on the immigration issue. To this day, the most popular Trump administration issue. And it doesn't stop there because now we get to the true beautiful fumble. And it's really not even a fumble. We're talking kicking the football that isn't there, Charlie Brown flying up in the air and falling flat on his skull, kind of like that guy trying to stop the ICE SUV. Kind of a moment here. And we're talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So as a bit of a fun recap, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an individual who had MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles in very overt, repeatedly categorized and cataloged MS-13 symbology. The dude's a member of MS-13. Several U.S. courts had found that he was either a direct member of MS-13 or very, very, very likely to be a member of MS-13. He had immigrated here illegally. He was caught in Tennessee in high suspicion of trafficking people from the border through the United States, which is a service, by the way, that MS-13 provides. And the Biden administration ordered the Tennessee Highway Authority to let the man go, where he would then proceed to repeatedly beat his wife and endanger another man's child. And then the Trump administration grabbed him and deported him to his home country, El Salvador. And the media lost their ever-loving minds because, due process was violated. Even though he had had several court hearings already. And James Boasberg swoops in and says, "You can't do that. Get him back here." And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they ruled that if El Salvador wants to give the guy up, then the United States needs to convene basically a 5-minute hearing where they go, "You a member of MS-13?" And then it doesn't matter what he says because he has no legal authority to be in this country in the first place. And it gets worse, so much worse. But Not for most Americans here, and I'll explain why in a second. Radio crew, we got to send you over to the commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, over here on the live stream kind of crew, I gotta be frank with you. I was not expecting, if this individual, this Kilmar Abrego Garcia, after all we discovered about him, after the humiliation, the plummeting in the polls, right now there is what is kind of a facsimile to an approval rating, like a faith in the party rating of the Democrats. According to the latest CNN poll, they are at 19%, 1-9. To say it is a record low for that party would be an understatement of understatement. So, while we're all here being, buds and pals, I didn't really think we were going to see a disastrous fumble from the Democrats by going back to the whole Maryland man, kind-loving father routine. Again, the calls that were played to the public of the wife begging for a restraining order because Kilmar had beat the crap out of her, repeatedly threatened to kill her, number of different things there. I really wasn't expecting them to go all in on this, but never, ever, ever underestimate Chris Van Hollen. So Pam Bondi came forward this morning and announced that there were a series of new revelations upon a deeper investigation into this individual that now meant the United States really wanted this guy back, because these aren't just crimes related to illegal immigration. There are a series of charges that the United States wants to deal with directly. Here's White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt.
Abrego Garcia has landed in the United States to face justice.
Excuse me, that's Attorney General Pam Bondi, not Carolyn Leavitt. Sorry about that.
On May 21st, a grand jury in the Middle District of Tennessee returned a sealed indictment charging Abrego Garcia with alien smuggling and conspiracy to commit alien smuggling in violation of Title 8 U.S.C. 1324. We want to thank President Bukele for agreeing to return Abrego Garcia to the United States. Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like.
Now, here's the fun part. And by the fun part, I mean, this is where things really hit the fan. And that's not exactly going to be all kicks and giggles. For those on the right who have had a pretty rough and long week in some respects, kind of on the optics front, the Democrats had one opportunity they have not had in months, to look like a better party to the American people, to act not crazy. Because in the middle of the Trump and the Musk feud, all the left had to do was, and I said this yesterday evening, when they were just tweeting popcorn emoji, GIFs, and pictures, and AOC said, the girls, they're fighting. That was fine. I mean, if they would have just done that, then they would have kind of skated through and maybe even looked slightly better, maybe get that approval rating up to 22 or 23%. Did they do that? No. So Kilmar Abrego Garcia was on his way back to the United States. And in a particularly awful decision, immediately, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who originally flew down to have drinks with and demand the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, gets out in front of the public and issues a big honking statement. After months of ignoring our Constitution, it seems the Trump administration has relented to our demands for compliance with court orders and due process for Kilmar. This has never been about the man. It's about his constitutional rights and the rights of all. He is not a citizen of the United States. He does not have this ethereal constitutional right that Van Hollen is describing at all. That's not outlined in the Constitution. The kind of due process that he's describing about a kind of hearing is not a constitutional mention. But we'll get to that. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial, and then we'll all enjoy this lovely train wreck together. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So all the Democrats had to do was not goof up what's been a pretty decent week for them optic-wise. And by a decent week for them optic-wise, I mean they weren't the center of attention. Because anytime the Democrats have been the center of attention, basically since Kamala Harris took over in July, it's just been a disaster for them anytime they were on camera ever at all, period. And so with Trump and Musk having kind of a public falling out, with the big beautiful bill in kind of a rocky place, all they had to do was act normal, and they couldn't do it for 3 minutes. So Kilmar Abrego Garcia is on his way back to the United States, and all of these Democrats come out of the woodwork to talk about how, oh, the Trump administration caved. Ah, taco, Trump always chickens out. Ha, ha, ha. And then, and I shouldn't say then, because this information did not come out after the statements from the Democrats had been released. The information regarding Kilmar's indictment from the Department of Justice was already present when they started making these statements. If you're in politics, and I know there are some individuals who are in the offices of representatives and senators from both sides of the aisle who tune into the show, allow me to give you a smidgen of advice. If there is information out there that is just broken and you want to get a tweet, a statement, a press release, something out to a press conference, a video, you want to get something out, do yourself a favor. Do your representative or senator a favor and read the bleeping document before you post your big grandiose braggadociousness. Just a little bit of a tip there, because what the media and the Democrats in Congress proceeded to do is humiliate themselves openly and without remorse. Or recourse, even. They haven't changed directions since either. So Van Hollen goes out and starts bragging about the guy, and individuals like yours truly start reading the indictment. And not only do we find out that the individual is being indicted by the Department of Justice for suspicion of human trafficking, he's also being indicted for child trafficking. I'll say that again. He is also being indicted for child trafficking. And, quote, additional evidence that the government has uncovered as part of its investigation discussed further below regarding the defendant, that's Kilmar Abrego Garcia, past violence and attempted solicitation of child pornography also calls for pretrial detention and militates against release. So not only is Kilmar Abrego Garcia a wife beater, a member of MS-13 who repeatedly endangered children in the driving crazy and threatening to hurt them kind of way, not only was he an illegal immigrant who consistently evaded Border Patrol, not only did the Biden administration order the Tennessee Highway Authority to release an individual who at the time was trafficking 4 or 5 grown men that had put extra seats in the vehicle for the purposes of trafficking. The officers pointed this out, that they put extra seats in vehicles in order to hold more people on trafficking runs. But there was additional evidence that this man solicited and distributed child exploitative materials, including child pornography, and participated in child trafficking, which means that he may have had a hand in producing the child material as well. Now, here's why this matters. The Democrats are currently running themselves a little victory lap over Kilmar Garcia coming back to the United States. They may have just played a part in ensuring he gets a death sentence. Under Tennessee law, under federal law, if you participate in child exploitation over a period of time in which you can be accused, and it looks like all of the evidence is here, that Kilmar Abrego Garcia can be hit with an ancillary charge or an auxiliary charge of child slavery, he could qualify for the death sentence. And if you think that Tennessee has any qualms about giving a serial pervert and child molester the rope, the lethal injection in Tennessee's case, I don't know what to tell you. So way to go, Democrats, by the way. I will say congratulations for not only making Kilmar Abrego Garcia your banner that you have carried through every conversation, but now you have added to the list your celebrations at bringing back a man who is likely guilty of the worst crimes one can commit against the most innocent people on the face of the planet. Insane. Incredible. What a move. And CNN still playing with. All of the media is going to keep calling him Maryland man. Oh, excuse me. All of the legacy media is going to continue calling him Maryland man, though he is a citizen of El Salvador who immigrated illegally. Also, you've got CNN today with Representative Ivor saying, "Oh, this is your constituent. This is your buddy, your pal," as though the Garcia family was signed up to vote as non-citizens. It's not the case. Here you go.
Congressman Ivey, you, of course, are Abrego Garcia's representative in Congress. You went down there to El Salvador not too long ago.
No, not as representative. And before anyone says, well, but the census counts illegal immigrants, the census means that because there are House representatives allotted in that, what that means he's his representative. No. There have been multiple cases in federal court that show that a representative in Congress is not beholden to speak to, answer, or provide open lines of communication and services to an illegal immigrant. Great case in point here. A representative of the United States Congress cannot block me on Twitter, X, or any social media application. They can, however, block illegal immigrants or people who are not United States citizens. They are not the representatives or senators of illegal immigrants. So CNN's going to go down this road. MSNBC just went full on clown mode today. I know, not really surprising, but just useful to keep in mind. So this morning, according to Greg Price, who captured both of these clips, friend of the show, MSNBC cut away from President Trump as he was laying out the details of how Abrego Garcia is a gang member, human trafficker, domestic abuser. And then this afternoon, MSNBC aired Senator Van Hollen's entire 38-minute press conference after the child molester returned from El Salvador. So first of all, here is MSNBC rushing to cover up Trump's statements because, oh God, we can't let people know that Garcia is the worst human being out there presently.
In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. Two separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse.
We've been watching President Donald Trump there swearing in the new administrator of the CMS.
She's all, by the way, if you've ever heard a news broadcaster talking like this here, they're reading a teleprompter that hasn't filled out yet, which means that a network producer at MSNBC saw Trump was going through a series of DOJ-listed crimes and things that their banner boy, Maryland man, had done, and they got a cover. And so they start putting line by line by line, like, get out there, quick, go! Fantastic. By the way, of course, airing later that afternoon, as I said, the entire 38 minutes of Van Hollen celebrating the return of the left's most cherished hero.
Communication, not with your lawyer, not with your family, with nobody. That is a violation of international law. And as I mentioned, El Salvador is a signatory to that. Thank you all very much for being here. And
now here's a fun fact. So Senator Chris Van Hollen didn't stand at all during the Trump kind of State of the Union style address. He didn't clap for the mom of the slaughtered children by illegal immigrants. He didn't clap for the child with brain cancer. He didn't clap for one of the bombers who targeted U.S. troops during the Afghanistan withdrawal being sent back to the United States. He didn't clap for any of that very basic, easy to appreciate stuff. And there were a few Democrat representatives in the House who did clap. So it wasn't just explicitly a whole party decision. He made a choice not to clap for a child with brain cancer, but he is out there waving the banner overjoyed that a pedophile, wife beater, member of MS-13, who has MS-13, again, symbology tattooed on his own knuckles, that one of the worst people, a participant in human trafficking, child trafficking, perhaps the exploitation and the advancement of child slavery. And Senator Chris Van Hollen's like, oh yeah, cancel everything. I'm going to fly out of the country. I'm going to go get margaritas with the guy. We're going to go have this big, huge press conference. I'm going to talk to his wife, the same one who filed violent restraining orders on him. This is truly one of the biggest political blunders of all time. We're going to talk about it. Radio Crew will catch you soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, over on the live stream side, it really was not necessary for them to do this. You did start to see a couple of Democrats, by the way, after Garcia was finally down in CCOT, in his great homeland of El Salvador, where he was also wanted for several capital crimes. Once he was down there, a few Democrats said, wow, it's looking really bad. Maybe we don't call him Maryland man anymore. Maybe we don't call him, this outstanding father and husband and whatever else. And now that he's on his way back and the Democrats think that they can score a cheap victory, again, the Trump is chickening out thing, which is definitely not what happened here at all. If you think that's what happened here, you got to read that DOJ indictment. Hoo boy. And by the way, I think that's the reason why Bukele was like, yeah, you can have him back. Because if there is one thing Bukele absolutely abhors, it is gang members who abuse children. Specifically, he has talked about that for a decade and a half on the public stump. Every other kind of crime, Bukele understands the human rationalization of it, whether it comes to drugs and basic violence that humans are known for. But the organized abuse of children, he detests. He has said on record before it makes him throw up. So that's clearly the reason why. But the Democrats thinking they can score a victory here, saying, oh, he's wrongly deported Maryland man. That's how, again, CNN was covering it. MSNBC was calling it, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post, even Politico is getting in there with this kind of nonsense. It is a very, 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 very bad move. It is a horrible move for the Democrats. Again, Trump and Elon Musk were fighting. That was kind of a big news story. You had the big, beautiful bill that was in crisis. And this happened the last time, too. The last time that the Trump administration was not struggling, but just didn't have a lot of momentum. The tariffs weren't going over really well with some of the economy. The stock market was in turmoil. All they had to do was not mess it up. And along came Kilmar. Well, now Kilmar has returned to save the Democrats from having a moment where they are not blithering idiots. So from the bottom of my heart, congratulations. Congratulations, Democrats. Incredible. I tell you what, the Republicans must have some kind of deep state operatives in the DNC. There really is not a way they could be this incompetent. Case in point number 2 is Hakeem Jeffries, who, again, amid all of the immigration customs enforcement actions, the arresting and the deportation of drug dealers, serial sexual abusers, and those engaged in human and child trafficking, Hakeem Jeffries has said, you know what, these ICE agents who have received threats at a time when things are being firebombed, there are actual terror events and open assassinations. So a lot of the ICE agents are wearing masks during operations. Again, upholding constitutional law by operating in a manner that is federally allowed and encouraged. To expel foreign invaders is something the federal government gets to do. There is no local government that can supersede the Fed on that one. Hakeem Jeffries decided that, it's time to hold a little press conference and announce that he would ensure the police were doxxed. He'd release all of their information. Oh my God.
Every single ICE agent who's engaged in this aggressive overreach and are trying to hide their identities from the American people will be unsuccessful in doing that. This is America.
Nice voice crack.
This is not the Soviet Union. We're not behind the Iron Curtain. This is not the 1930s. And every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will, of course, be identified. That, in fact, is the law.
It is not.
And we're going to make sure that the American people have the transparency necessary.
Amazing. He didn't say that about January 6th, by the way. He didn't say that about undercover FBI agents who were questioned about the fake kidnapping plot of Gretchen Whitmer. We're going to talk about this more in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We got to bring back the radio crew.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So amid the massive public support from Republicans, independents, and a lot of Democrats for Trump's immigration policies, who individuals like Fetterman and Bernie Sanders has pointed out. Again, Bernie Sanders, and less so AOC because she's young and stupid, she can't help herself, and she really is stupid. When I say the stupidity of AOC, I'm not underestimating her. That is, in fact, estimating her, to quote Michael Scott there. Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman do realize that a massive majority of the working class in this country despises illegal immigrants and illegal immigrant criminals, those who commit violent crimes, drug trafficking, crimes against children. God in heaven. That's not popular with Americans to just leave them in your local neighborhoods, and also mooching off of federal aid like Medicaid, Social Security, for example. So the Trump administration's immigration policies are incredibly popular. The Democrats have decided this is unconscionable because, after all, it's all about the minority, which they perceive are these poor, huddled masses, as being just innocent pregnant women being rounded up. And they won't look at the photos of people who are being rounded up. They won't look at the actions and the crimes of those who are being expelled. Again, if you are a citizen of this country and you commit an act of terror, you are entitled to all of the bells and the whistles that come with what you believe is an episode of Law and Order. You're entitled to the full trial and the full everything else. If you are not a citizen of this country, you do not go through the same legal process. And Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, the awkward vocal love child of Obama and Pelosi, because that's what he sounds like, walking out in front of the country and saying he won't rest, he won't stop until all of the federal agents who are currently receiving all of the death threats in the world for expelling the dealers of fentanyl, the human and the child traffickers, the serial abusers, that Hakeem Jeffries is going to make sure that those guys who are receiving threats from all of these lefty, insane people who are committing terrorist assassinations in Washington, D.C., terrorist assassinations in New York, terrorist firebombings in Colorado, and on and on and on, that those people, they deserve the transparency of knowing who all of these federal agents are, who are, again, just removing foreign enemies of the United States. Not a pregnant mom, not old grandfathers playing Cuban chess, but those who are openly associating with or are guilty of some of the most horrible crimes on the face of this earth. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible decision. Mark my words, in a couple days, this will be a subject that Harry Enton over at CNN will be issuing a new poll on. That is how horrible this decision is. Now, on and over from kind of the other quick news side of things for the day, the Supreme Court of the United States has given Trump so many wins in court this week, the Pacers are about to give him a contract. I have never seen a string of victories like this from SCOTUS. So, not today, but yesterday, the Supreme Court dropped 3 unanimous decisions. Unanimous decision number 1 was Ames versus the Ohio Department of Youth Services, in which case Marlene Ames, a straight person, sued her employer, the Ohio Department of Youth Services, because her boss, a gay man, refused to promote her, a qualified individual, because of her orientation. And the left argued there's no such thing as reverse discrimination. Only straight people and white people and Christian people can be guilty of racism or discrimination. Everyone else has been such a victim. That it's just not fair. And so this wound its way up through the courts, and the Supreme Court ruled, again, unanimously, that discrimination in this case is discrimination that has always been considered a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. The decision, by the way, is written by Ketanji Brown Jackson, who said that it doesn't matter whether it's a majority or a minority. If discrimination is occurring based on race, sex, etc., then it's discrimination, which shocked me as much as I'm sure it shocked a lot of you, if you'd heard about it yet. The second unanimous decision by SCOTUS was delivered in favor of the Catholic Charities Bureau against the Wisconsin Labor Industry Review Commission. So the Wisconsin Supreme Court had actually ruled against this Catholic charity. The argument against the Catholic charity was they were providing too many services to people who were not a member of the Catholic Church because, God forbid that Christians actually serve those around them, which I'm sorry, aren't we always being accused of not serving anyone outside of the church? So therefore, the Catholic charity wasn't entitled to any tax cuts that other religious institutions were entitled to. So the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, again, a very liberal Supreme Court, ruled against the Catholic charity. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States, in a unanimous decision, this one written by Justice Sotomayor, says, yeah, the Catholic charity, guess what? They're allowed to be Catholic. You absolute morons. I've heard some of the oral arguments from this particular case, scathing remarks from liberal and conservative justices alike, and then whatever you want to call John Roberts. Then the last of yesterday's unanimous decisions was the Supreme Court of the United States ruling in favor of Smith & Wesson versus the Estados Unidos Mexicanos, otherwise known as Mexico, otherwise known as Sinaloa Cartel's partnering organization. And they found that, yeah, Mexico has no evidence or legal cause to sue an American company because they can't keep their own freaking country safe. That decision was written by liberal Justice Kagan. Then, today we had two back-to-back Supreme Court victories, this one along more partisan lines, 6-3. Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson dissenting, found that the Department of Government Efficiency can access whomever the Trump administration decides, or whichever department the Trump administration decides that DOJ wants access to. So it doesn't matter if it's the Social Security Administration, or it's the Department of Education, or it's the Health and Human Services, or it's the Department of Energy. That information is the property of the executive agencies under the President of the United States. So if the President of the United States says, I'm going to have an auditing agency audit the data, then yeah, big shocker, he's allowed to do that. Now, this is something I think that's quite funny here. The argument against this that was provided not really by the lawyer who was trying to sue DOJ, but by the judge, the federal activist judge, Ellen Hollander from Maryland, big surprise, said she found that DOJ's efforts at the Social Security amounted to a fishing expedition based on little more than suspicion of fraud, and allowing unfettered access puts Americans' private information at risk. I've read the entire case. I've looked at the categories of data that DOJ was supposedly sorting through. First of all, a fishing expedition is every audit ever. If an audit agency is looking for fraud, they're going to fish for it. And the reason that's called fishing is because you on the outside of the water are not a member of the organization below it that would be acquainted with the data on a daily basis. So if you're hunting for fraud, you have to go fishing. That's how you find fraud. So another major win for the Trump administration. You know what? One more, because again, there's so many W's in the federal court system. The U.S. Court of Appeals for Washington, D.C. Circuit ruled today in a 2-1 decision that the Trump administration can bar the Associated Press from unfettered access to the Oval Office, reversing a previous ruling that organizations like FIRE said upheld press freedoms. And the appeals court found, the Oval Office is not the general White House press briefing room. The Oval Office is not a massive football stadium style room. So you may be only able to get like 8 to 12 members of the press in there. So yeah, the Trump administration gets to pick and choose who goes in the Oval Office, because the Oval Office is the president's private and personal room. Same with Air Force One. The press isn't entitled to climb into bed every evening with President Trump and interview him while he's going to sleep. No. That's what the White House press briefing room is for press briefings. Kind of incredible stuff there. Now, I wish I could tell you that's the only news from today, but we'll have to get back to that when we get over the radio crew back from commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right. Because news just doesn't stop. And I do mean it really is not stopping at all. The Trump and Musk feud. A couple of updates on this. There was a brief moment where Politico suggested that Elon Musk, after basically calming down a little bit after the feud, reached out to the Trump administration and essentially tried for an olive branch. And that there might have been aides in the White House, again, this is according to Politico, I haven't verified any of this yet, that were reaching out to Elon Musk to try to, smooth things over and kind of olive branch little peace moment here, which I do think will eventually be coming, by the way. But the Trump team essentially said, nah, we're going to cool off for a while. And then Trump said later today that he had, nothing super serious against Elon. Didn't care if Elon doesn't like him anymore, but there's other stuff going on, which is a good move from the president of the United States to say, look, I've got stuff going on. I don't really have time for this. That is a fair thing to say. Whether or not you side with Elon and kind of the idealistic budget cuts that are necessary, that he's fighting for, or the Trump administration who understands pragmatically that a big tent movement situation, it requires a little bit of elbow grease in a bill that may not be the world's most beautiful package. Musk has essentially started arguing with people who have criticized him, mainly Steve Bannon. I'm not really going to get into all of that because I don't think that it matters as much to you, the American people, other than, this isn't going to be the complete disintegration of the Republican Party. It's not. The big, beautiful bill, so to speak, is going to make it through the Senate. It's going to go back to the House. That's likely going to be passed with one other slight change. And then we're going to get that through. Now, there is a bit of a deadline and a bit of a crunch, but Johnson's been through worse. The Senate looks like they are going to move this forward perhaps a little bit sooner than was expected. Cruz mentioned that just yesterday. There is a little bit of drama that is racking through the House because, it's the House of Representatives. Of course there is. This comes from the Republican side of the aisle, however, that one particular Republican representative from Florida may have been lying about, hiding certain aspects of the faith that he had, basically passing himself off as kind of a born-again Christian, whereas evidence shows maybe he was actually a Muslim who got married at the Al-Qaeda mosque, which, again, totally fine to be an individual of the Islamic faith. That shouldn't, block you from holding office in the United States, freedom of religion, but lying or obfuscating your past is not necessarily the best of moves. So we have on Over from the Blaze, Peter Gietl in just a couple of moments to talk about this entire story and where it's going. So we're going to cut over to him. I think he's waiting on the line. Then we'll be back for a bit of mail time and wrap up. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Closing time.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. It's great to be joined by the managing editor of Frontier Magazine, Peter Gietl. It's good to see you, dude. It's hopefully not as roasting hot as it was the last time I was in Dallas.
Great to see you again, Tony. It was great to see you out in Dallas, and thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So right to the top of the matter here, so many different investigative pieces are being kind of left to the wayside because of the current political scandal and drama that, don't get me wrong, it's captivating. It's interesting to keep track of, but there are a lot of important stories that are being left to the wayside. One of these is y'all's investigative pieces on Corey Mills. Can you break it down for us a bit?
Yeah, it's a long, meandering story and investigation, but I'll try and distill it down. It came about probably back in April. It kind of came on our radar that he had possibly been married in this mosque. And, some of the investigative details had been floating around on the internet for a while. So we heard about that. And we were like, that seems kind of strange, but, there's probably some, maybe he married a girl, whatever. But then it turned out that it was the Dar al-Hijra mosque outside of Washington, D.C., which is kind of known as the Al-Qaeda Mosque. Like Anwar al-Awlaki was the imam for there for a while. Some of the 9/11 hijackers went there.
A little strange.
Yeah.
For a Republican congressman from Florida to be marrying someone in this particular mosque. A little strange right off the bat.
And
okay.
Yeah. And the imam was the officiant at the wedding of this extremely radical mosque where you have to be a Muslim in order to convert, or in order to get married there, you have to be a Muslim. They don't do intermarriages there in the same way a Catholic or Orthodox synagogue. So that immediately kind of like set off these alarm bells. And then we started to dig in a lot more. The investigative team here, Jill Savage, myself, Steve Baker, and just more and more things started to come out that just didn't make any sense, that were very strange about his backstory, his history, his service in the Army, his getting married in a radical Muslim mosque officiated by a unindicted co-conspirator from the World Trade Center bombing back in '93. So it just began to spiral into so many different directions and areas. It was almost hard to keep track of, but that's why it ended up being such sprawling large pieces that we wrote about him.
I mean, one of the craziest facets of the story is that, again, there you do have in a lot of red states Republicans who are questionably so, some suspicious backgrounds and things of that nature. Of course, Corey Lee Mills from Florida's 7th since like 23, I think, is when he was first in Congress. The issue at play here is the idea that the mosque doesn't do, mixed marriages here in the case that, like, again, you might have a Catholic marrying a non-Catholic, or, Baptist marrying a non-Protestant, something like that. No, you actually have a mosque that openly says we only marry one Muslim and another Muslim. And Corey has never gone on the record to say, hey, I'm a Muslim. Like, what's the catch here? And if you are, then not necessarily a problem, but why hide it? What's going on here? Something's a little bit fishy.
Well, I actually, Congressman Mills called me up randomly to berate me for an hour. And it was
in English or in Farsi.
Well, he actually does apparently speak fluent Arabic. So
there you go.
But
sorry. I can't criticize him too much for that, because there was a time I studied Arabic, but
yeah, he never said that it was off the record or anything, and basically just berated me for an hour about how Blaze is fake news and how dare I ask questions about his international weapons company and blah, 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 blah. And but so I did give
How dare you ask about a man who got married at the Al-Qaeda mosque and his international weapons company? When have Islamic radicals ever had problems with international weapons deals? What are you suggesting?
It's fake news, as he called me fake news multiple times. So I asked him, and he did admit that he was married in this mosque, but he claimed that he's not a Muslim. For what it's worth, that's what he went on the record and said, that he's not a Muslim and he had no idea who this guy was. Now, there's plenty of people who, off the record on background, who are kind of scared of him, have told me that he was a practicing Muslim for years. Take that as you will. But, for what it's worth, he claims that he isn't. But I mean, this kind of what started and made us pay attention, but really the main problem to me is he's run as this war hero, American patriot, and none of his backstory is backed up by any of the men that he served with in the Army, and then later was a contractor for years for a military contractor during Iraq. I talked to dozens of men that served with him, and they all had the same exact story that's different than what he ran on his campaign for Florida 7th.
It's really quite amazing what some of the contracting organizations, and I won't say a lot here, but what some of the contracting organizations do to vet an individual for their presumed actions in service. Because, again, when it is just a contracting group, the character of the men is not just backed by the tax dollar of the United States, but on the success of the missions at hand and how well the individual contracting the particular missions or operations are satisfied. It's always curious to me whenever I see an individual who served walk out in front of everyone telling all of us how wonderful he was and how brave and gallant he was, because, and this is an anecdotal piece of evidence in here. I don't know very much at all about Mills' service record, just to get that out of the way. I know very, very, very few. In fact, I can't think of any individuals other than Robert O'Neill, who gets to be the exception because he killed bin Laden. That is the exception. I can't think of any servicemen who had done a lot of valiant things who then come home and brag about it. I don't see it. That usually the hallmark of a man who did a very honorable self-sacrificial job during his time in the military doesn't go around bragging that he was the super soldier like Arnie out on the battlefield. You don't see that because it's just, I mean, that should be self-explanatory.
Well, and I talked to dozens of these guys, most of them on the record, some off the record on background. They didn't want to go on the record, but they all had the same exact story. And you could tell like really hurt and angry that, people they knew died over there. They made sacrifices. These guys are real professionals. They were, former Green Berets, or, they were, LAPD SWAT sniper, and then they became a sniper for one of the, really exemplary service records. And, they're like, it's just not right that he's made up this whole story because we were there and we remember it. And it's just wrong to say that he was blown up twice when that's just not true.
Especially when there are guys who did, in fact, make a significant sacrifice that did cost them the ultimate price. Or cost their friends the ultimate price, the kind of stuff that, again, I understand that kind of resentment. And just kind of to go back and tie up this particular knot, there were two threads that I think need to be tied this way. I don't really have an issue with someone having a bit of a messy background. I don't have an issue with somebody maybe making a mistake in a former life or having a former association with a group they no longer have. For example, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I used to be a member of like the Indiana Freemasons. I did. I'm not a member of that group anymore. But, knowing that in our movements, a lot of people really don't like the Freemasons, I have no problem saying that I used to be part of that group. I mean, I don't know why there's this concerted effort from a lot of individuals to cover up. Like if he used to be a man who practiced Islam and he got married at the mosque, but he's no longer practicing Islam, then why not say that? Why does that have to just be a phone call to you, Peter Gietl, over the story when he could have cleared this up so that you guys never even had to do this whole investigation in the first place?
Yeah, it's very perplexing. And I might even have you beat, Tony. I used to be a liberal in college, so there's that.
Oh my gosh, the horror. Now that I've never been. It would be very easy to clear up. Obviously, he kept repeating that it was just like so out of bounds for me to bring this up and ask him. To me, that's not a crazy question to ask a congressman. What religion are you? And he was acting like this was the craziest thing. And then also, like, how dare I reach out to his wife, who runs this international weapons company with hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts with the American government, about the business dealings, that's just like completely out of bounds. Like, how dare you would like contact my wife? It's like, well, it's about her business that she's involved with the U.S. government. So yeah, I think he has a considerable ego, and he doesn't want to entertain questions from the press that to me are extremely relevant and should be answered. We are also, but this is what is bewildering to me, and I know it's been bewildering to our audience. We've gotten questions about this before from individuals who have also gone through the stranger side of an ego. I said this last night when talking about the Trump and Musk thing. I have no problem with guys having egos. I don't. A lot of guys have egos, especially a lot of successful guys who have gone out, who have done things, who are charismatic, who have a lot going for them. I have no issue with that. And expecting that people whose egos get bruised to then defend said ego is not unusual. I mean, it's the class 5 category hurricane, terrible dumpster fire that, again, a guy defending his ego, day ending in Y. It's like women avoiding accountability. I mean, hey, it's just a day ending in Y. Sorry, I say that knowing my wife is going to give me crap over hearing that on the show later. In all seriousness, though, there is a time that we've never really seen in American politics where people are willing to forgive prior sins or prior actions. I mean, seriously, you have people that are falling over themselves right now amid various scandals that arise going, oh, that was 20 years ago. Who cares? This only came out because the internet documents everything. Everyone's done stupid things in their youth. Admittedly, I have not done some of the things that these scandals are suggesting, but there's a lot of willingness to throw a lot of that to the wayside. The weird desire to cover it up, though, to maintain this kind of white sepulcher ego, though, that's more of a red flag for me than if you just said, yeah, I got married in a mosque. Hey, she was really hot. What do you want me to do? I mean, I don't know. I just find that strange.
In this particular case, unfortunately, basically, try not to overstate this. Basically, everything that we looked into about him is either just an outright lie or up for debate. He said he had a master's degree. The college had never heard of him. There's just he's getting sued by the federal government for all these, loan violations. There's just a litany. And to me, again, most egregiously, is saying a story about your service record that none of the other men there remember happening. And they remember actually quite the opposite of what he's saying.
So you'll notice that I haven't actually listed a series of details from your investigatory pieces. And believe it or not, I did that on purpose because I want people to go down to the description. I want them to click the article links provided, and I want them to go read these stories yourself, because I did. They were great. I read them on the flight home, the first one that was out, and then the other one broke. I think you guys were getting ready to run it while I was there, and then sent it over my way. It's a fascinating, fascinating story. I mean, it really does. After the George Santos scandal, this should be one of those that, come on. The intrigue. Come on, maybe a possible Al-Qaeda connection to the current United States Congress through a Republican in Florida. You can't buy that kind of entertainment unless it's with Qatari money. So, oh man, Peter Gietl, really appreciate you. Of course, the Frontier magazine is fantastic. We've added them over to the shelf, and what you guys do at the Blaze is excellent. We really like it.
Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll have you back real soon, and hopefully with less of a deep, dark investigatory side of things and more of just celebrating the summer of the Gulf of America. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, very briefly, a little bit of bonus tonus and mail time. It's a bonus mail time bonanza. So again, for those who haven't joined us before, mail time's really straightforward. Every show needs a viewer interaction segment, both so that I can read the questions and the insults and things that maybe I hadn't thought about in a certain way before, because I happen to be one of the hosts who kind of likes reading all the questions in the comments. So if you send us something, we'll absolutely read through it. And we have a couple this evening that are really, really... Oh, hats off to the Barbershop Quartet, says Eric. Thanks, that's me. That was me in a multi-track. So there you go, little fun trivia to start out the evening. I also have one for jail time, but that's jail time. Anyway, sorry. So let's get to the first question here. This first one's from Beth. So, honest question, am I being led down a fake belief that the U.S. is in good shape? I saw a podcast that said we're actually worse off than Canada, the UK, and Europe, and we will be destroyed soon. No, you are certainly being led down a fake... Well, you're being led down a fake belief that the UK, which is currently experiencing the wonders of Islamic riots, Europe, which is currently experiencing the wonders of Islamic riots and no military, and then Canada, who is experiencing all of the messes rolled into one. No, they aren't better off than the United States. The UK, Europe, Canada do not actually have the magical healthcare systems that they are purported to be. That's why so many people choose to come to the United States for treatment, though they be outside of the country. So, no. As far as the economic system of the United States, our bad day is the best day ever for 95% of the rest of the world. So, no, we're fine. I mean, again, I know that a little bit of chaos and fear-mongering makes really great media. After all, if it bleeds, it leads, is the standby news anchor kind of take it to heart kind of phrase. But nah, things are fine. Go outside, touch some grass, enjoy a steak cooked medium rare or more rare so, and have a blast. That's kind of what I'm going to do after we're off the air here. This next one is from a guy named Jiminy Cricket. And I'm guessing his name's Jim. And I like Jiminy Cricket, kind of a pun there. And I like that. Nice. He says, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have both said that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. With Trump being named on the list by Musk this week, do you think that there's a big cover-up going on? Are Kash and Dan being blackmailed? Thanks. Love the show. Well, first of all, as I've said before, regarding the Jeffrey Epstein being on the list or in the Epstein files, one of the editors over on our staff at the Daily Signal brought up a really great point. That is a very carefully worded tweet to avoid being sued later on for libel. Epstein's own defense lawyer has pointed out consistently that he asked and begged Epstein for anything that basically they could use to come out and swing against Trump to essentially kind of cop some kind of a deal. And Epstein didn't have anything. Again, Trump threw him out of Mar-a-Lago back in the early aughts. I was talking with a Democrat strategist on the air today about this who admits as much. The fact of the matter is, a ton of people in this country of any kind of prominence are likely in the Epstein files. Because the Epstein files is not just like one page of like, here's who did things with him, and it's like a list of 45 people. That's not a thing in that list. That's not how that works. There are a huge 25, 30, 40 years worth of files on anyone that Epstein ever bought a churro from. And those include a lot of people whom he associated with at one time or another. So for Elon Musk to say, oh, Trump, he's in there. Musk has already kind of walked back from this just a little bit, even from what was in there. And if you think that the Biden administration would not have accidentally leaked, like they did with Trump's IRS documents, that Trump was actively in the Epstein files in the whodunit section, dude, you're nuts. Like everything about Trump has been leaked so far already. Supreme Court decisions were getting leaked during the height of that. So, no. If the FBI was willing to raid Melania's underwear drawer, I guarantee you they would have leaked that Trump was an active member of the Jeffrey Epstein list. So, no. As far as are Dan Bongino and Kash Patel like being blackmailed by the super duper extra super duper deep state over Epstein's death? No, I don't think so. There is no reason at all to disbelieve. Now, do I think that the cameras being shut off is in fact suspicious so that he could get away with it? Yeah, that part I find suspicious. Like, did Epstein make some kind of a payment or someone make some kind of an agreement? So giving the gentleman the revolver kind of a situation, if you don't want to go through all of the shame, the humiliation and the stuff, I'm going to make sure you have the ability to commit said, I think that's much more likely. And why do I think that's much more likely? Well, because the evidence, in fact, does indicate such. I'm one of the people who also said kind of the opposite. Do I think there's some kind of a big super blackmail scheme? There comes a point when you have to admit that maybe a theory was not correct. That's part of it. So that's where I currently am on that question. So this next one from Robert. He says, why doesn't Pam Bondi, arrest Hakeem Jeffries? Is she afraid of him? So he hasn't yet committed a crime. As a member of Congress suggesting that you are going to reveal names of police to the public, that statement in and of itself is not a crime. And in fact, when you do start crossing Rubicons and arresting individuals for openly illegal things, the things that you arrest them for better in fact be illegal. Like Representative LaMonica McIver, Timu Jasmine Crockett, body slamming and punching federal agents in Newark. Yeah, that's That's arrest worthy. But Hakeem Jeffries, not quite there yet. Now, he's saying stupid things. But right now, the major damage doesn't come from Hakeem Jeffries not being in jail. In fact, if you're the Trump administration right now, what you really want is Hakeem Jeffries just to go, or keep running that mouth. Because, again, 19% is the kind of approval rating equivalent. I forget the exact terminology the CNN used. Belief that your party is doing anything useful, things like that, is currently where they're sitting. So a rough spot indeed. But Pam Bondi walking out and basically getting a bunch of them to pipe down, I think is not the move to do. And I don't think that's what she is doing. This next one is from Terry. Do we really have to see MSDNC clips? This is a great question. And it's a question that I really do enjoy answering. I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction because I'm awful. Why do I play the numbers of clips that I do on the show? And I do play a lot of clips, a bunch. And I keep them essentially preloaded on the show all the time. We'll talk about that Jim Carville clip up in just a second. The reason that I bring so many clips to the show is that I really don't want you to take my word for it. I really don't. Number one, because to be completely honest, that absolves me from issuing retractions and corrections because it limits the amount of times that I'm wrong. If I build everything that I'm showing you on the clips that I'm showing you and the articles that I'm reading to you excerpts from and the communications that I'm sharing with you, well, then I can be as openly biased and conservative in my coverage as I like because you are seeing the clips for yourself. And I think that's a good thing. Now, some of my colleagues and contemporaries out there, they don't necessarily do that, and that's fine. Every different strokes for different folks. But as far as I'm concerned, I like that as a former science teacher. It's just easy for me to go, here's the source, here's the data. Why am I wrong? And then for them to argue with a clip of Karine Jean-Pierre or a clip of Hillary Clinton or Hakeem Jeffries. Sorry, I'm not able to crack my voice like he does because I'm not a prepubescent teenager. That's a lot easier, and it's also more fun. So that said, there is one last question that was sent in that is a question I receive quite a bit, although not exactly always worded in the same way, which is, are the Democrats going to get it together before midterms? And the answer that I've had consistently through this point is no. There is no evidence whatsoever. Right now, both parties are not exactly launching stellar 2026 campaigns. But the Republican Party is, at this point, I said this on with Rob Carson today over on Newsmax, is like a married couple fighting in the car. Right now, you have the husband and the wife. You have the husband, who is the populist, who's driving the car. And then you have kind of the establishment and the kind of wife, the Bushian era. She's griping at him and complaining and grabbing the steering wheel. And no, it's this exit. No, it's this exit. You have the kids in the back. You have the traditional conservatives and the libertarians, and they're fighting with each other because they're still arguing about social issues the rest of the country's moved on from. That's the Republican Party car heading towards 2026. And it's a race. So what's the other vehicle? Because, a married couple fighting in a car is not perhaps the most devoted, race steady, moving towards one direction, gonna beat all of the competitors kind of vehicle. Well, the Democrats' car is essentially on blocks, has no engine. I mean, it's got a tranny. But at this point, realistically, the Democrats' car isn't even moving. You've got Jasmine Crockett yelling about how the car manufacturer is racist. You got Nancy Pelosi trying to continue trading stocks in the back seat. And then you've got Chris Van Hollen, who's trying to pick up illegal immigrant hitchhikers. I'm really going to stretch this analogy out as far as it can. And so when you look at the race for 2026, yeah, the Republicans have problems. It's a day ending in Y. If anything, Republicans are very used to going into elections having problems inside the party because as the Republican has become more of a big tent coalition, there's going to be times when I don't agree with the nationalist populists in the party. For example, many of those crew over at the Blaze, whom I really like, and they are excellent, excellent guys. They're a little more nationalist conservatives than I am. There are other crews who are more on the free market absolutists side than perhaps I might be. Or in the Bushian side, believe it or not, even I, yes, Tony Kinnett, know a couple of the Bushian establishment Republicans and get along rather well with them. It's necessary to go into a race working together with others, even though I'm going to fight with you tooth and nail over perhaps budgetary measures. because your New York constituents don't deserve to get a chunk of my taxes to pay for their bad decisions. But the Democrats don't have this because they are very lock stock from the top down, but they have raised an entire generation of Democrats who are all about the backstabbing. And they can't get over the social issue stuff. They just can't. And they can't even get to the economic vision side of things where Bernie Sanders is, we have to have the healthcare. We have to make doctors perform the abortions on everyone. Where's my pudding? We got to do it everywhere. Must fly around the country with the hot young Latina woman. Like, wait. They can't even get there because they're still arguing over the LGBTQ plus 25A divide by 3 don't pass go crew. And then the racism crew. So then you've got guys like James Carville, who are the only guys left talking about a future for the party, and they're using all of their time essentially just to complain about the Jews. No, really. Here's James Carville complaining about the Jews and their tax cuts.
I tell you who this exposes in a more profound way, and I hear this all the time. I mean, you got to try to raise money from like really wealthy Jewish fundraisers. And it said, look, James, I'm Democrat, but I can't be a part of the party because of what happened at Columbia. But what the did the Democrats have to do with what happened at Columbia about it?
If you have to ask that question, you're retarded. What did the Democrats have to do with Columbia? The Democrat Party openly endorsed the actions of university protesters. And when the Trump administration began the cancellation of student visas and temporary visas because the individuals at Columbia violated the terms of their visas, it is the Democrats who are very, very angry. You have people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who last time I checked are members of a prominent faction of the Democrat Party. So like, what do the Democrats have to do with Columbia? Everything. Half of your constituency graduated from the Ivy Leagues and are now working in human resources departments everywhere. So good luck avoiding this one.
Mm-hmm. All right. But you because they have some students at Columbia fucking, generally made an ass of themselves.
Oh, yeah, that's what they did. That's the sin. They quote, made an ass of themselves, unquote. Oh, that's it. I mean, sure, they were saying, kill the Jews and the Christians and globalize the Intifada and, vandalizing buildings and assaulting and battering students at universities around the country. And sure, there have been fire bombings and terror attacks and assassinations. But hey, that's just making an ass out of themselves. Oh.
Well, I can't do that, but I can be for a party that everybody endorses the alternative for Deutschland.
Here we go.
Read the modern incarnation of National Socialism, if you will. And I just find these kind of people.
We're going to pause right there because I want to make this point. James Carville is usually a little more self-aware than this. Genuinely, he's usually a little more self-aware than this. Perhaps the dementia's finally got to him as well. He talks about how the Columbia stuff, I don't know how that happened. That wasn't a Democrat thing. And then he immediately moves towards, after all the terrorism, all the violence, he then starts saying, I just don't know how anyone could be for, and then he paints the Republican Party and Donald Trump as the Nazis, not, just real authoritarian or they're stepping on whatever. Actual, genuine, he uses several analogies which are uncommon to describe the Republican Party, half of the country, as Nazis, as German fascists. And I'm sorry, you don't see the connection there? That if you tell an impressionable young idiot every day for 10 years that the Nazis are coming for them and they're going to kill them, what, you're surprised now that they are launching terrorist activities and assassinations? You can't simultaneously suggest that your party is totally normal and everyone else is just a little out there, and then immediately go to Mach 52, breaking the quantum barrier by suggesting that your political opponents are all evil fascists who need to be slaughtered and stopped before, as Chuck Schumer puts it, we're all going to die.
People, I literally, my instinct is, and they tell me that. They look me right in the eye. And I said, no, you just want your fucking tax cut.
There we go.
That doesn't apply to most people, most Jewish people see right through that.
Here we go.
But the ones that don't see through it, they just don't really, at the end of the day, they just want that fucking tax cut. And you can see it every day.
Now, just for kicks and giggles here, let's do a little looky see through here. The party that has the large groups of people that are openly going after the Jews, that's not the Republicans. It ain't. Best of luck to you, suggesting that actually, people are stupid because they want their tax cuts. I do love it when wealthy people in this industry criticize Americans for not wanting to pay out the butt in taxes. It is quite nice, in fact, not to give the government tons of money. But again, Carville wants to come out here and play this line and thinks that that's going to be the spearhead strategy for 2026. The same thing they have tried 5 election cycles. Seriously, they have tried this for 5 election cycles. In midterms, key special off-year elections, and in the presidential. They have now tried the Republicans are all Nazis, we're going to die 5 times. And now the policies which are in place are some of the most widely successful approval rated policies since President Bush's 2002 economy leverage, which is wild. The Trump average approval ratings are climbing. Trump is now just under 2% underwater on the approval disapproval, which is some of the highest he's ever been. At this stage of the last Trump administration, he wasn't rocking a 47.5% approval rating. That's for sure. And it's not just right-wing pollsters that are finding this as well. But alas, we'll get to this. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks very much for tuning in. It's a blast, as always, to be with you. If you would, head over to the podcast. You can find that in the description. Subscribe there. That really helps us out. Or, of course, the Daily Signals YouTube and Rumble channels, which your chats keep me 150% entertained at all times. Most of the time after we finish an episode, we'll go back and cut off the beginning of the live stream so that people who watch the video later don't have to listen to me ramble on like I'm doing right now. But I like to go look at the live chat because, I don't know, I think that you guys are entertaining. It makes writing future segments a lot easier, that's for sure. So have a wonderful weekend. Hope you get to spend some time with your families and that the news cycle is slow. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.